Good evening, good evening, good evening, Facebook. This is Coach Monique back. I am the family finance coach. I am the legacy coach. And I'm coming to you guys today live and direct from my office. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the article that I have been doing for you guys about needing a financial game plan. And so why is it so important for us all to have a financial game plan going into 2023? Okay, so yesterday we talked about the number one reason, and that number one reason is because you work hard, right? You work hard. You're already working hard. And so why not manage your money properly? Okay. It takes time to get that money in your hands, doesn't it? When you go to work, you may work 40 hours a week. Some people work 50 hours a week. Some people work 60 hours a week. Some people work 70. Some even work 80 hours a week. And so as hard as it has been for you, right, to get that money in your home, to get that money in your house, it would be remiss, right? You would be remiss if you did not also properly manage that money, because it's already hard enough to come by. And so when you work hard, you deserve to play hard, but you got to manage your money first. Okay. So we talked about all different reasons why working hard, you deserve to have a good financial game plan. A couple of the quotes that I pulled out yesterday, one was, do the best you can until you know better, but when you know better, do better. That is by Maya Angelou. The second one was a quote by Eleanor Roosevelt. It says, I am who I am because of the choices I made yesterday. And so it is important for us to, of course, we look at the past, not so that we can change it, because we have no authority over the past, but what we can do is work on our actions now. What we can do is work on changing things for our future. Okay. So the second reason tonight, and I got stuff spread out, so bear with me. Hey, Keenan, how are you? And so the second reason you need a solid financial game plan is because your family needs stuff. Okay. Your family is depending on you to come through for them, right? Some of us have children who are not 18 years old, who still live at home. Some of us have children who live outside of the home. Some of us are married, right? Some of us are in relationships and we have families, and our families are looking to us for support. So I'm going to be talking about several things tonight. I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit, but it's important for you guys to see it. And I want you really to see the picture that I'm painting here on why it's important to have a solid financial game plan. So first and foremost, your children need stuff, okay? So I was doing some research and I found something on Harvard's website. It says, loving our children takes many forms, okay? Such as tending to their physical and emotional needs, providing a stable and secure family environment, showing affection, respecting their individual personalities, taking a genuine interest in their lives, talking about things that matter, and affirming their efforts and achievements. Okay. So those are just some basic things, and they may seem basic, but those are things that children need on a daily basis, right? I know in that we didn't hear the word money. But if you read between the lines, you know that money is needed for some of these things, right? And so, of course, we can have all the time in the world and we can spend time with our children. But how many people know that spending time with your kids is not enough when you don't have any money, right? Because that time is going to be a little tense because you don't have money, because you got the pressures of the world, because you got to pay bills, because you have to pay your mortgage, because you got to pay your car note, because you have to pay, for your rent and your car insurance, then you know that you feel those pressures. And so the love that we're trying to express to our children, we may feel a little bit of pressure because we can't come through like we in and of ourselves want to come through for them. And trust me when I tell you, I have been a parent, right? I was a single parent at one point, and at one time it was very challenging for me to take care of my children myself. And I had to figure some things out. But the number one stressor that I had was money, not having money, right? Not having stable income, being paid at a job, but not being paid enough, getting on the bus, not having a vehicle. So all of those things played a huge, it was a huge contributing factor of how I felt at the end of the day, right? And sometimes when money is an issue, our attitudes is off, right? We snapping on those kids. They better not dare ask us for chicken nuggets from McDonald's when we got food at home. Because in and of myself, I already know I can't supply it. And so how many times can we find ourselves in a position where we're consistently telling our families no, not because we want to tell them no, but simply because we just don't have the money? I would have to imagine that there is no parent in this world. And even though we say, well, we don't want our kids to be spoiled or whatever the case may be, but we're talking about some basic stuff right here. I want to have the opportunity. If my children say, and of course, my kids are big, right? But if my grandchildren say, you know what, grandma, I want, X, Y, and Z. I want to be able to go and grab that for them. Now, it may not be anything huge or big or anything like that, but I want to have the opportunity to provide that for them versus telling them no. And when we consistently tell them no, we're teaching them something. We are conditioning them. We are conditioning them that it's not possible. See, I believe when the Bible says that all things are possible through Christ. See, just like we hear those scriptures, our children hear those scriptures as well. And so when we are constantly saying those scriptures about, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. There's nothing impossible for them that love him, right? All of that stuff. But they never see it come to pass in our lives. And they begin to question God and say, well, when is it going to happen here? Like, what is the problem? And oftentimes it don't got nothing to do with God. It got everything to do with our stewardship, how we're budgeting our money, how we're choosing to make our money, and things of that nature. And so I got a couple of quotes tonight, and we're going to be talking about a couple of things here. But listen to this. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys everything else. Okay. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys everything else. See, sometimes, and I know growing up in the church, people will often have that approach, like, having money, it's like, it's a sin. It's a sin to have money. It's a sin to have this and that. But who want to be in poverty for real, though? Who want to be struggling? Who really wants to live paycheck to paycheck? Now, I believe when the word says that God gives us the power to get wealth, that's exactly what he meant. So when does the struggle end? Right? Does it last forever and ever because we took, because we are Christians, because we are saved, because, we love the Lord. Now we have to live a subpar life because of that. I don't believe that's what God is saying to us. Right? When you look at the scriptures, Jesus talked about money more than anything else. Why is that? Because the Bible says that money answers all things. And even though some people don't want to really grasp that scripture in that context and say, well, we got to get some money going, but it's true. Because even ministry takes money. Everything takes money. So even though money might not buy happiness, guess what? It buys everything else. And I would even question that. Why? Because if I have a situation, right, somebody in my family, because we're talking about our family needs stuff tonight. If I have somebody in my family that needs to pay their mortgage, that needs to pay their rent, that needs to pay a bill, whatever, they need money. Do you think that they would feel a little bit happier if I was able to supply that for them? Or do you think they would be upset if I supplied that for them? They probably would be thanking God, right? Because somebody in the family had what was needed. We look at people that have, I don't want to get political, but if you go back and look at the story of that young lady, that young black woman, I believe her name was Sandra Blanchard. I might be getting her name wrong, who was in jail and she died in jail. And her bail was like $500. But when she called and she tried to contact people, nobody had it. Her friends didn't have it. Her family didn't have it. Can you imagine? Can you imagine being in that position? Nobody that you know can help you with $100 a piece. 5 people. And I'm not saying that she reached out to 5 people, but she reached out to more than one person and nobody had it. Either they had it or they weren't willing to give it up. And so now you got people literally dying because they don't have money. Do you think that they would have felt a little bit better about their situation had the money been in house? And so those are the type of things that we got to be thinking about. See, even though people say money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys everything else. Right? If I'm able to pay my mortgage, I'm gonna feel a little bit better about that versus me not being able to pay it. I think my children would feel a little bit better about that if we got a roof over our heads versus being at the shelter. You know, and so when we say money doesn't buy happiness, we got to ask ourselves, am I really willing to be without money? Right? Because I got another quote for you, and I read this and it was powerful to me. It says, money doesn't buy happiness, but neither does poverty. Who want to be poor? Nobody. And there's probably a small percentage of people in this world that have taken a vow of poverty. We know that we have not taken a vow of poverty. You know how I know? Because we go to work every day, right? We're trying to pay our bills. We're trying to do the best that we can. We have not taken a vow of poverty. But when we look around at our situation, some of us are in impoverished situations because we got money coming in, and all the money that comes in, it all goes out the door. So we are literally living paycheck to paycheck. And the thing about poverty is people think that it's not happening to them. People think it doesn't apply to them because their lights are on today, because they got food in the refrigerator today, because they got clothes on their back today. It's not happening to them. But the truth of the matter is 80% of people in these United States live paycheck to paycheck every week. And so one missed check could mean that the car goes bye-bye. Could mean that we can't buy groceries this week. Could mean that I don't get to pay my mortgage. Could mean that my kids don't get to go to college. Could mean that so many other things that I can name off right now. And so we got to ask ourselves, man, do I need a solid financial game plan or not? Because if what I'm doing and what I've been doing over the course of the years is not moving me forward, then I need to have somebody take a look at what I'm doing. Somebody who can take me a little bit further down the road than what I was able to take myself. And it's okay to be in that position. Listen, I understand I've been in that position. I know what that's like, right? But just because you've been in a place doesn't mean that you have to stay in that place. We're talking about getting set up for 2023. And I know that I'm probably making it sound super deep, but guess what? It is. It is deep. Because we're talking about your very livelihood. We're talking about your family. There is no reason that we should be seeing GoFundMe's go up. See, our family needs us. They need us to deliver. They need us to come through, right? For some of us, we got children. We got little children. If something happened to us, our income goes away. And now what happens to my family? Are they going to be able to stay in that home? Are they going to be able to continue paying the bills without my income? See, if I don't have a solid financial game plan, making sure I got income protection, number one, so that if something happens to me, my income can stay in that house for another 20 years. Now, that's what true legacy is about. That's what making sure that my family is taken care of is all about. Because all of us know that death is inevitable. It is going to happen to all of us. We don't know when, but we got to be prepared for that. We got to be prepared for the inevitable. We can't play Russian roulette with this thing. See, life insurance is the one thing that you cannot get when you need it. You have to already have that stuff. And so we're talking about being properly protected and prepared for whatever happens. Now, we can't plan for the rest of our lives because we don't know how long that's going to last, but we can plan for what we know is going to happen. And what we know is that we're going to leave this earth one day. What we know is that we have families today, And if we got families today and we are the only ones who are taking care of them, right? Who's going to do that when we're gone? If nobody is reaching out and giving a willing hand, and I'm not talking about something little, I'm talking about major. Okay, I'm talking about, listen, I need my family to be taken care of for the next 20 years if something happens to me. You got me? And they like, no, I can't do that. I'm struggling over here too. So then what? We can't have that on our conscience, okay? And so let's talk about a couple of other things. You can't see my screen right now, but I'm just going to talk about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You guys have probably heard that many times before, but let's talk about it. Maybe you haven't heard it, so I won't take it for granted that you know what I'm saying. I'm going to move my camera a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about this. So when you think about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's shaped like a triangle, okay? At the bottom of that triangle are basic necessities, okay? So I want you guys to Google this, Abraham Maslow, M-A-S-L-O-W. And so at the bottom of that is psychological needs. This is what everybody needs in the world today. Psychological needs, these are the things: air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. Those are the things that are at the bottom, the bare minimum. When you don't have money, the bare minimum can be a struggle. And we're talking about going up and going higher and higher on Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But that's the basic, right? I need food. I need to stay alive, okay? Because if I don't have life, I can't do nothing anyway. So I need air, I need water, I need food, I need shelter, I need sleep, and I need clothes. You can't even go get a job without the proper identification. Can't even go get a job without an address, right? You can't even go get a job without having the proper attire on. You got to have the things that you need. You can't work the job if you don't have food to put in your belly. You don't have the energy to work. So these are just basic things. And so now let's go up a notch. Safety needs, okay? Personal security, employment, resources, health, property. That's safety needs. So we're talking about supplying things for our families, right? Those things take money. Everything that I listed takes money. How does health take money? Right? If I'm not eating the proper foods, then how can I remain healthy? If I'm not going to the doctor, if I'm not going to get my teeth checked, to get my colon checked, right? To get everything that I need to get checked as a woman, as a male, whatever I am, I'm going to be going down eventually, right? And so I got to make sure I have access to insurance, okay? Personal security, my physical person. I got to make sure that I'm secure. We got to make sure that we secure, right? Employment. Got to have some place to work so I can go make some money. Different resources and property. So then the next one right in the middle is love and belonging. So we're talking about friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. Okay. And sometimes when we get into a situation where we are money is tight, our relationships begin to get a little strained. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? 50% of all marriages fail because of money. Did you know that? Money is the number one reason for divorce. Money is the number one reason for divorce. And I would have to imagine when we look around the world and we see the crime that happens, a lot of it can be traced back to money needs. People are stealing because they need money or they're too lazy to work, but it's still a money thing though, right? Because if I got all this money, why do I need to be out here stealing and robbing people and being a thief? Why do I have to try to get something for nothing? Why do I have to lie to go do different things if I have money, right? And so we want to make sure that the money that we do have, that not only is it going to where it needs to go, but if it's not enough money, I need to have a plan and a strategy for how am I going to get more? Because see, God gave us all gifts and talents. Yes, he did. He also gave us all the power to get wealth. And so how are we going to utilize what he already gave us to get where we need to go. When we think about coaches, because like I said earlier, I am a finance coach. When we think about coaches, everybody who is successful has coaches. You got LeBron James, right? He got a coach. Kobe Bryant, he had a coach. I know I'm talking about basketball people, but even successful business people have mentors. People who have been there, people who can help them and assist them because they've done the research, because they're working in the industry, because they know what they're doing, because they got the professional licensing to help me to get from point A to point Z. That's who I would need, right? And so for me personally, as a woman, I don't take it for granted that I know everything, because I know I don't know half this stuff that I think I know. So I have to link up with somebody and humble myself and say, you know what? I can learn something from you, because it is impossible to learn something that you already know. When you already know it, you are completely shut down and you don't want to hear what anybody else has to say. See, yesterday when I talked about, and I'm going to be wrapping up in a second, but yesterday when I talked about, the fact that for most people that I sit down with, and when I ask them, okay, what did you learn about money growing up? People learn from their parents, which is totally fine. But some of those parents did not have money. They made mistakes, which we do. And kids learn that stuff. And sometimes those kids can use those things as a guiding post and they do the same exact stuff. Or, they say, I'm never going to do that because they did that. It really depends on the child, right? But I have heard it over and over and over and over again. The reason why I'm doing this is because it worked for my grandmother. It worked for my mother. It worked for my father. But when we go back and look to see how many people in the family are actually financially independent, we can't really find any. So apparently, even though what they were doing was okay for them at that time, there still is a more excellent way. Okay, there may be a more excellent way that can help you to get where you're trying to go just a little bit faster. Because one thing I know, when I talked about this yesterday, is about these reports. And so in the African American community, we are 228 years behind our white counterparts when it comes to building and establishing wealth for our families. We are 2 centuries behind. I am not making up those numbers. If you want to Google this, look up the report called The Road to Zero Wealth. It's going to highlight where we were back in 2017 before COVID even came. And so now we're at a place where we still trying to figure things out. More people are wanting to invest. More people are wanting to do different things. More people are starting side businesses and they starting side hustles and they're trying to figure out, well, how can I make this happen? Prices are escalating and going up and higher and higher. Jobs are not paying more. Jobs are laying off, right? Jobs have people, they're overworked and underpaid. And then we go back to the needs, right, of our family, like I talked about in the beginning. Loving our children takes many forms, such as tending to their physical and emotional needs. Well, if I don't have anybody tending to my emotional needs, how am I going to tend to theirs? See, it all starts with the parents. When we all jacked up, it makes everything else that we got to do a little bit more challenging, right? When money is tight, listen, my attitude might be just a little bit different. I might be a little bit more on edge. But for some of us, we're working. We're working a whole lot. We're working ourselves into the ground. And I got another quote for you guys. See, this is the thing. The way that children spell love is a 4-letter word. It's T-I-M-E. It's T-I-M-E. Kids spell love T-I-M-E. But when you're working all day long to pay the bills, to get ahead, right, to get a little bit further down the road, you ain't spending time with the kids because you're always working. When you come home, they sleep. You're tired. They want to play, right? You get home and everybody all turned up. They happy to see you. You walk through the door and you are absolutely exhausted. Now you falling asleep on the couch watching TV. You eat dinner. You go to bed. And you missing their childhood. See, kids spell love Time, but how can I give them more time if I got all these responsibilities? Those are the very things I'm talking about. It's possible that what you're doing right now is not working. And you may need to recalibrate some of the things that you're doing, right? So let's take a look at that budget. Let's just be transparent with that first. Are you spending a lot of money eating out because you don't have time to cook because you're always working? Or, right, are you saying, well, I'm going to treat myself because I work hard, so I'm going to, just go buy whatever I want as far as food is concerned, and you can end up spending $800 a month on food? What about if you weren't spending that money? What if you actually pack some sandwiches for lunch or whatever the case may be, fasted a couple of days, okay? And then change your financial outlook so that you did not have to work as hard. Maybe that's help you to get where you need to go. Then your monthly expenses go down. Your money goes up. Eventually, you're going to be out of debt. And now you can start putting money away for the future, even more money away for the future, because honestly, nobody can continue working 80 hours a week until they're 80 years old. We all going to slow down and shut down at some point. And so we have to consider the fact that one day I want to sit down and retire for real. I don't want to miss my children growing up. I don't want to miss them coming up. There are some sacrifices that need to be made, but is there an end to that sacrifice? Or does it last for their entire childhood? And if the sacrifice lasts for their entire childhood, were you able to provide everything that they needed? Were you able to provide everything you said you were going to provide? Maybe you will. Maybe you won't. But why second guess it when you can get a financial game plan? That's what we're talking about, okay? And so I have one more quote, I believe. Let's see here. Okay, here it is. This is by Zig Ziglar. It says, money doesn't buy happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves. That's a good one right there. That is a good one right there. Money does not buy happiness, but everybody wants to find out for themselves. Listen, if it was me, I'm talking for myself, speaking for myself, okay? I would much rather have money than not have it. In this economy, okay? The inflation rate is triple right now. You would be crazy not to have money. Be crazy not to have a grasp on what you're going to do. We going into a whole new year. A lot of things happening in the government. I don't really want to touch on that stuff right now. Some things may happen, some things may not happen, but what are you going to do? Because it was never the government's job to take care of us. That was always on us. It was never on them. Just like it was never on our job to help us to become wealthy. That's on us. God gave us the power to get wealth. He didn't give our job the power. He gave it to us. And so it's our responsibility to make sure that we're being good stewards over what he gave us. And so this is the last thing I wanted to share when I was talking about the needs of kids. I'm going to read this and then we're going to wrap up. And I'll see you guys again tomorrow. And so I did a little research and I wanted to find out the average cost of college and tuition. Okay. And so this was published back in in October of 2022. And so it says here the average cost of college in the United States is $35,000, well, $35,551 per student per year, including books, supplies, and daily living expenses. So we got some people that want to send their kids to college. We're talking about in today's dollars, though. We're not talking about in 15 years. We ain't talking about in 10 years. It's about right now. The average cost of college has more than doubled in the 21st century with an annual growth rate of 7.1%. The average in-state student attending a public four-year institution spends $25,707 for one academic year. The average cost of an in-state tuition alone is $93.77. Out-of-state tuition averages $27,000. Okay. The average private nonprofit university student spends a total of $54,501 per academic year. $37,641 of it on tuition and fees. Considering student loan interest and loss of income, the ultimate cost of a bachelor's degree can exceed $500,000. So how many people want their kids to be super excited to go to college, super excited about graduating from high school, only to find out that their parents didn't save any money, which happens, right? But do you want them, or would you prefer for them to go out and get $500,000 worth of student loans? See, they're going to find a way to get those kids in that school. I promise you that. But are you going to take the responsibility on and add that to your debt? Or are you going to let them do that themselves? See, our family needs stuff, right? So that is the reason why we need a financial game plan. We don't want to be surprised when we get to that point and say, man, I don't know what we're going to do. I can't work, 24 hours a day. So what is the solution? And I truly believe that it's not always that the solution is money. It's not always more money. Sometimes it's just a better management of what you do have. Sometimes it's an allocation of what you do have, putting it in the proper places so that it can do what it needs to do for you in the future, for your family in the future. And so that is all I have for you guys for today. I hope that this added value to your evening. All right. And tomorrow I will be back with the third thing, or the third reason on why you need a financial game plan.